Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In a quaint Pennsylvania town surrounded by rolling hills and dense woods, the average morning began like any other. Until it didn't. On the first day of autumn, a chill lingered in the air, setting the stage for a shocking discovery that would unravel the fabric of this tight-knit community. The sun had barely risen when an unnerving silence settled over the local park at the end of Maple Street, where children had spent countless afternoons playing catch and flying kites. As the park's caretaker made his habitual morning rounds, he noticed something amiss. The leaves crunched beneath his boots, a sound that seemed amplified in the stillness. Veering off the usual path, he was drawn to a small clearing, the sun just beginning to filter through the thick branches overhead. There, partially hidden beneath a layer of fallen foliage, lay a tarnished metallic object. Intrigued, he leaned closer, realizing it wasn't a harmless relic from the past, but a piece of evidence that would alter lives forever. His breath hitched as he recognized the smooth contours of a gun. It held a weight that spoke of stories untold, pain unvisited. The caretaker's heart raced, both from fear and the heavy gravity of what this weapon could signify. Whispering winds rustled the trees, as if nature itself refrained from speaking the unspeakable truth hidden deep within the park. Within hours, the park would host not laughter and games, but police cars and yellow tape, marking the start of an investigation that would reveal the town's buried secrets. The victim. As news of the gun spread through the community, a veil of uncertainty descended upon the small town. Speculation swirled among residents like autumn leaves, caught in the wind. What could have led to a firearm being hidden in such a peaceful place? The answer lay in the backstories of those who frequented the park, specifically in the life of a young man named Jason Harper, a 24-year-old local with a passion for cycling and a magnetic smile. Jason was adored by many in the neighborhood. He spent hours volunteering at the nearby youth center, where he coached basketball and offered informal tutoring, hoping to inspire the next generation. As the town's self-proclaimed little brother, Jason was the type of person who never hesitated to help anyone in need. Yet, beneath this amiable exterior, shadows lurked within his past. Friends noted Jason had recently become distant, wrestling with the nincompoop turmoil of his familial relationships. Rumors about petty disputes with a handful of local youths occasionally surfaced in hushed conversations, but those closest to him dismissed them as mere gossip. There was also talk of his struggles with anxiety, a burden he bore silently while projecting the facade of the upbeat leader the town knew him to be. Few could have imagined that this vibrant young man would be brought up in discussions of tragedy mere days after the discovery of that gun. Now his whereabouts were unknown, raising fears that he might be entangled in something far darker than anyone could fathom. As the sun set over the hills, casting elongated shadows on the ground, Jason's absence loomed over the town like a silent specter, begging for answers in a narrative where innocence had become overshadowed by impending danger. The crime scene. The sun dipped below the horizon, surrendering the town to a muted palette of grays and blues. Police officials had cordoned off the area surrounding the clearing in the park, their yellow tape flapping gently in the breeze, a stern barrier between the world outside and the chilling reality concealed within. As officers meticulously examined the terrain, the weight of their task hung heavily in the brisk air. Detective Rachel Morgan arrived on the scene, the warmth of her breath visible in the gathering chill. With nearly 2 decades on the force, she had navigated countless crime scenes. Yet the eerie stillness of this park, once alive with laughter, struck a chord within her. As she stepped past the brightly colored markers signifying collected evidence, her eyes landed on the gun, its metal glinting ominously beneath the fluorescent lights strung overhead. Nearby, forensic technicians carefully sifted through the ground, searching for any spent bullets or fingerprints. While others documented the scene with precision, Morgan bent down, her eyes narrowing as she noticed the uneven scatter of dirt and mulch. It looked as if someone had hastily tried to cover something an unsettling notion, considering the weight of secrets that the town harbored. Amidst their investigations, the team noted tire tracks, partially obscured by tall grass, leading away from the clearing. The marks told a tale of urgency. Perhaps a hurried escape. This small town, nestled in tranquility, was already beginning to reveal its hidden fractures, each element whispering an unsettling story that pierced through the peace like a jagged shard of glass. With each passing hour, the complexity of the case deepened. The sense of loss and desperation amplified. A community's innocence was slipping through their fingers. All the pieces were there, but the picture remained shrouded in shadow. The early hours of the investigation bled into the following day, and the atmosphere in the town felt electric with tension. Detective Morgan gathered her team in the small police station, where the scent of burnt coffee lingered, mingling with the mustiness of case files strewn across the table. A whiteboard dominated one wall, its surface marred with hastily scribbled notes and photographs, a growing timeline of events that would soon turn into a labyrinth of leads and suspects. "Here's what we know so far," Morgan began, gesturing towards the board. Jason Harper was last seen on Saturday night, leaving his friend Tyler's place after a game. He didn't return home, and his phone went silent. It wasn't until this morning that we found the gun in Bellwood Park. She emphasized the connection between the gun and Jason, her voice resolute yet measured. After confirming the gun's registration, they learned that it belonged to a man named Derek Lentz, known for his boisterous presence and aggressive demeanor. Morgan's team had received reports of Derek's recent spats with various locals, hinting at a pattern of intimidation that cast shadows on his character. They reached out to Tyler, Jason's friend, who was visibly shaken by the news. He recounted their night, speaking in fragments, repeating the sounds of laughter and camaraderie, juxtaposed with the nagging feeling that something terrible was about to happen. As he mentioned a disagreement between Jason and Derek during a local party days before, Morgan noted the connection with glee and concern. This might be the thread that unraveled the entire story. As the meeting concluded, each officer left the room, resolve painted across their features. They were entering the murky waters of a case that would demand more than just diligence. It required empathy for a community wrestling with its fractured identity. The investigation was far from simple, and the countdown to revelation had just begun. The dead ends. As days turned into weeks, the investigation into Jason Harper's disappearance seemed to spiral, leading the detectives down several dead ends. The initial excitement of leads began to wane, replaced by a grim sense of frustration hanging over the entire department. While reports filtered in sightings of Jason at various locales and conflicting testimony led to a breakthrough. The town, once vibrant and close-knit, was now steeped in suspicion and uncertainty. Detective Morgan sat at her desk one late afternoon the dim light of her desk lamp casting a glow over the many files that had become her constant companions. Each document told a story, but they hadn't yet formed a coherent narrative. The sound of a clock ticking echoed in the silence, amplifying the weight of time pressing down on her. She pored over the statements, searching for connections that seemed just out of reach. Anger simmered in the background as they interrogated Derek Lentz. At first, he maintained a facade of aloofness, deflecting suspicion with bravado. However, in subsequent interviews, cracks appeared in his bravado, revealing anxiety tinged with desperation. Yet, every time they thought they had him pinned down, he produced an alibi or simply deflected their inquiries again. Meanwhile, the tips they received about other local youths who had clashed with Jason went nowhere. Leads faded quickly as witnesses recounted hazy recollections, twisted tales fueled by gossip, and rumors that lacked concrete evidence. With each passing day, the frustration intensified. It was becoming painfully clear that Jason's world ran deeper than they had anticipated, littered with layers of deception and secret. The afternoon light waned, casting a long shadow across the station. The officers' spirits sagged collectively, aware that the community was counting on them. Despite the hurdles, Morgan remained undeterred, a flicker of unwavering determination in her chest. They were in a race against time. And somewhere in this tangled web, the truth awaited its discovery. A break in the case. The chaotic hum of the police station was interrupted one crisp morning when Detective Morgan received a phone call that would shift the tide of the investigation. As she listened, she scribbled notes with fervor, sensations of urgency coursing through her veins. A local bartender, Carla, had just reported something troubling a conversation she overheard between two patrons a few nights ago. With muted excitement, Morgan gathered her team, laying out the details. Carla described two men speaking in hushed tones, their discussion punctuated by mentions of the park. Following Jason. Intrigued, Morgan felt a spark of hope flicker in the back of her mind. Carefully, they began to piece together the string of conversations and the potential web of conflict surrounding Jason's life. As the day wore on, Morgan and her partner, Officer Castillo, visited the bar, its dim lighting offering an air of intimacy that stood in stark contrast to the gravity of their purpose. They spoke with Carla, whose recollections became more vivid with each retelling. She expressed lingering concern over the way one man had nervously glanced around, as though fearing he might be overheard. Following this lead, the detective sought out the individuals Carla had described. Gary Mitchell and Tom Wilkins. Both were known in town for their wild antics, but what they lacked in reputation, they made up for in audacity. Their interviews revealed layers of animosity that painted the alarming picture of a confrontation involving Jason. As new threads of evidence began to emerge, each officer felt the rush of urgency push them forward, invigorating their spirits. This was a pivotal moment in the investigation, the type of breakthrough that brought faint glimmers of hope for Jason's fate. In pursuit of the truth, Morgan knew they had to dig deeper, navigate the looming darkness, and connect the dots before the trail grew cold once again. The suspect. As the investigation forged ahead, the name Gary Mitchell reverberated through every corner of the case. The initial excitement surrounding the break in the case quickly recalibrated into a palpable tension. Detective Morgan felt the weight of the evidence rest heavily upon her shoulders. Gary was known for his volatile temperament and questionable habits, making him a prime suspect in Jason's sudden disappearance. Armed with new information, Morgan and Officer Castillo set out to confront Gary in a dive bar on the edge of town, a place that seemed to thrive on the darker narratives of its patron. Flickering neon lights outside cast an eerie glow on the grimy windows, and the muffled sounds of laughter intertwined with the elixir of desperation that enveloped the space. As they entered, the atmosphere shifted. Sudden silence broke the air, eyes drifting toward the newcomers. Gary sat in a booth at the far end, his rugged frame slumped back against the worn upholstery, a half-empty glass lingering in front of him. Mustering his bravado, he looked up, a hint of irritation crossing his face as the two detectives approached. "Detective Morgan," he greeted, tension lacing his words. Despite the bravado, his eyes betrayed an uneasiness that Morgan couldn't ignore. The confrontation began, a volley of questions aimed at unraveling the web of interactions he claimed to have had with Jason. But each answer raised red flags, each claim weaving a thicker veil of deceit that heightened her suspicions. He painted a picture of innocence, claiming ignorance of Jason's troubles. Yet his agitation only grew as Morgan pressed further. In that cramped booth, under the weight of the detective's scrutiny, the facade slowly began to crumble. It soon became clear that Gary had more to hide than he wanted to let on. The shadows in his eyes hinted at darker dealings, a fleeting acknowledgement of a past that entwined him with Jason in ways that transcended mere acquaintance. As they left, Morgan felt a shiver of certainty that Gary was entangled in this mystery, though the truth remained shrouded in ambiguity. The trial. Months after Jason Harper's disappearance, the case transitioned from the murky depths of investigation into the glaring light of a courtroom trial. The community, once steeped in silence and speculation, now buzzed with trepidation. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as family members filled the courtroom's pews, their faces lined with worry, hope flickering behind haunted eyes. Detective Morgan stood at the back, her heart heavy but resolute. Dressed in a tailored suit, she felt the weight of the tense proceedings resting on her shoulders as she observed Gary Mitchell, the primary suspect, seated on the defendant's bench. His demeanor oscillated between defiance and despair. He was tethered to a narrative that could shatter lives or set them free. The prosecutor outlined the case against him, stringing together circumstantial evidence he witnessed, accounts of confrontations, the chilling connection of the gun, and Gary's shifting alibis that became more convoluted with each retelling. Among the testimonies, Carla from the bar spoke with courage, her voice unwavering as she recounted what she had heard that fateful night. Each wavering breath resonated with the weight of what was at stake, and Morgan could see the ripple effect in the audience, a collective awareness of the town's submerged pain. Gary's defense attorney attempted to dismantle the prosecution's case, raising doubts about the credibility of witnesses and the motivations behind their testimony. For every piece of evidence stacked against him, Gary offered an alibi with a mirage of rationale carefully crafted yet, Morgan sensed, woven with lies. As the trial drew to a close, the jury deliberated, the sound of their hushed conversations drowning out the tension that gripped the courtroom. Morgan could feel the weight of hopes and fears thundering in her chest as she braced herself for the verdict. The gavel echoed like a heartbeat, and the finality of the moment hung thick in the air, drawing the town into a deep collective breath quest for truth and justice was at hand. The aftermath. The verdict echoed through the courtroom, reverberating in the hearts of every inhabitant of the small Pennsylvania town. With a guilty verdict rendered against Gary Mitchell, a sense of closure began to settle, albeit bittersweet. The weight of relief intertwined uneasily with sorrow, as the community absorbed the harsh reality that Jason Harper would never return. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered, a cacophony of emotions swirling in the air. Some faces were marked by relief and gratitude for justice served. Others were etched with grief and anger, the heartache of loss lingering in the fabric of their lives. Detective Morgan stood at the periphery, watching the chaos unfold, the ache of unresolved questions echoing in her mind. Jason's absence wasn't merely a void left by one individual, but a fissure within the town itself. In the weeks that followed the trial, therapy groups sprouted across the community, eager to help those grappling with the aftermath. Morgan attended a couple, sharing stories of loss and recovery with people who, like her, had been touched by the tragedy. She found solace in the conversations, recognizing that healing would take time, and the community needed space to mend its wounds. As stories were exchanged, the intricacies of grief and healing unveiled themselves. Each participant was a thread weaving a new tapestry of resilience, overcoming fears that had rooted deeply in their heart. Morgan listened, vowing to help not just in her role as a detective, but as a supportive member of a community in need. In the ensuing months, the town slowly regained its rhythm. Children returned to the park, laughter filling the air once more. But the shadows of the past lingered, forever changing how they saw the world. Jason's memory became a beacon, a reminder that in the face of darkness, this town could find the strength to come together. The fight for justice had imprinted a lingering resolve, turning pain into purpose, unearthing the resilience that lay buried beneath their surface. Reflection. As the shadows of the past began to recede, Detective Morgan stood at the edge of the park, where the once vibrant laughter echoed with memories of a happier time. The autumn leaves crunched beneath her feet, each step drawing her closer to the site where the investigation had begun. The familiar setting stirred a complex mix of gratitude and sorrow within her. While justice had been served, the weight of loss lingered like a ghost, haunting the spaces where Jason had made his mark. In the weeks following the trial, Morgan had spent time ensuring that Jason's legacy would live on in a more positive light. She collaborated with local officials to create outreach programs at the youth center where Jason had volunteered, focusing on resilience and conflict resolution. This initiative aimed to steer the young people of the town away from the paths of turmoil and toward empowerment and support. As she took a deep breath, Morgan felt the crisp air fill her lungs, the heaviness of the case a little lighter. Change was slow, but she had faith. The community would emerge stronger from its trials. The scars would remain, a testament to the resilience built through shared adversity. With time, healing would envelop this town like a warm embrace, reminding everyone that they had the power to transform pain into purpose, hope become real.